Hello, this is Sondra Oster Baras bringing you a few words of Bible from the heart of Biblical Israel. This week's Torah portion is Vayera, and it begins in chapter 18 with the mysterious appearance of three angels to Abraham, just as he's sitting out in the heat of the day. I'd like to focus on just a few verses as part of this story to see something that's really quite amazing. So first of all, the chapter begins as follows. The Lord appeared to him, Abraham, at the oaks of Mamre. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. So the beginning starts that God is appearing to Abraham. But then the very next verse says, and he looking up, he saw three men standing near him. Now we are going to learn later on that these men are actually angels. But Abraham looks and he sees what looks like men. What is the connection then between the God appearing to Abraham and him seeing these three men? Well, there is a very famous Jewish scholar from the Middle Ages, Maimonides, who actually interpreted this in a way that is not the majority-held opinion, but it's an interesting opinion nonetheless. And he basically says that these three angels didn't actually appear to Abraham. They didn't actually physically come into his tent. But what we see, this whole story about Abraham feeding the angels is something he sees in a vision. And this is actually consistent with Maimonides' approach that he doesn't believe angels actually appear to humanity. That is what I would call a minority approach. It is definitely an approach in Judaism. It's not held by the majority. Just an important note, by the way, Judaism can respect and honor many differences of opinion, and this is just one of them. But anyway, his interpretation here, though, makes a lot of sense in the sense that we first see God appearing and then we see these three fellows. So what did God actually say to Abraham? How did he appear to him? So if you say that the appearance of the three angels is part of God's appearance, that kind of makes sense. But let's put that approach aside and go back to the more traditional approach, which says that there really were physically three men who were angels disguised as men who walked into Abraham's tent. So then we have to say, where can we find the continuation of verse 1? Then it sounds as if God appeared to Abraham. All of a sudden, these three fellows come. Abraham says to God, hold on, God, can't deal with you now because I have these guests. Now, again, this is the kind of thing that many of our commentaries have commented on and used it actually as an amazing lesson, okay? Abraham believed, and righteously so, because the Bible brings this as a righteous situation, that how important it is for a person to look after his guests, that it even justifies having God wait. Okay, all of this is, of course, a certain figurative kind of expression, but the idea being, there very often, think of it in this way, there's often you want to pray, okay, and you feel your time to pray for God is actually sacred. But what if at the same time your baby is crying? Are you supposed to stop praying in order to care for your baby? The answer is yes. Because when humanity has a need, you need to go attend to that need, and you can even wait to pray to God. Because God does not want you to abandon people who need you. God doesn't need you, okay? People need you. Okay, so that's a wonderful lesson. Anyway, we skip on then to verse 17, where God is essentially saying to himself, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? And this, of course, is a precursor to this amazing conversation that will take place between Abraham and God with regard to the future of Sodom, where God is saying, look, what do I do? Here's a terrible group of people. I want to just destroy the whole city. And Abraham begins to argue. Okay, and we're going to go back to that in a minute, but let's now skip to verse 22. Verse 22 takes him back, okay, from verse 17 to 21 is a kind of an insert here, giving us an introduction of what's going on in the heavens. God's thinking behind the scenes, okay? But verse 22 takes us back to where we stopped in verse 16, which is Abraham taking his leave from these men or angels. Okay, verse 22 says as follows. The men went on from there to Sodom, while Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Okay, now this is something that many people have questions. What does it mean? Abraham remained standing in front of the Lord. If we said the verse 1 begins Abraham about to receive this vision or appearance from God, but we said that he interrupted that because he went and he was taking, we see what he did. He ran, he took, he cooked, he's not standing still in front of God. He's been doing all this other stuff. So why does it say Abraham is still standing before the Lord? Okay. Now here we have a wonderful, wonderful explanation where basically our sages have said it really, if we really want to say it, we really should be saying, and God remained standing before Abraham. In other words, God waited for Abraham all this time. But because God didn't want to have it written in the Bible as if God waits on Abraham, it wouldn't sound very good. It wouldn't sound as if, it would kind of switch the master-servant relationship and would make it sound as if God is dependent on Abraham. So there's a bit of a switch. But the switch is not the essence of, it doesn't explain the essence of what's really happening. In essence, God began a revelation to Abraham, halted the revelation so that Abraham to go take care of his guests. And then God continues the revelation and in verse 23. Okay? So that's the essence, but it's being written in such a way, so it sounds as if Abraham is waiting on God because indeed that's the master-servant relationship or father-son relationship that is appropriate for God and Abraham. Okay. And then, though, what do we have? We have this amazing conversation between God and Abraham where there's an argument, where God says to, where Abraham says to God, will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? This is a charge against God. It's not saying, oh, God, please, could you please, have mercy on these people? Abraham is saying, how dare you, God? How dare you? You create a situation where the guilty, the evil people, and the innocent people will both be destroyed together. And this, of course, opens a dialogue where God accepts Abraham's assumption. He says, no, I'm not going to destroy any innocent people. And in the end, what happens is that God says there's one only innocent family in the whole city, and that's Lot, and God agrees to rescue Lot. He will get Lot out of the city and then destroy the rest of the city. And I think this perhaps is is an amazing message that we have in this Torah portion. Abraham, there's no criticism of Abraham at all. On the contrary, God agrees with Abraham. Now, I would believe that God understood and accepted this moral position that Abraham was articulating from the beginning. I don't know that God actually changed his mind as a result of Abraham, but I think this is teaching us a lesson to, yes, challenge God. When humanity encounters something that seems unjust, don't bury that question. Ask it. Seek God. See if you can get an understanding from God. You may not have an understanding from God, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't keep asking, because morality, justice, these are good and honest principles that God created us with that sensibility. Our conscience and our sense of right and wrong are essential to humanity. God has given us a Bible that helps us define what is righteous, what is good, and what is evil. Sometimes we will see things that seem to run in the face of that, and they may create questions, and it may be that those questions are something that we will not understand because we are not God, but we can continue asking those questions. This has been a few minutes of Bible. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Shabbat Shalom.
I hope you enjoyed that video, and we'd like to be sure you're getting all of our video content. So just click on the subscribe button below as well as on the notification bell, and that way you will have easy access to all our material. We look forward to staying in touch with you. God bless you and have a wonderful day.